Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Feature Spotlight webinar for July 2024. And I've got a couple of interesting things to go over for you today. So let me share my screen and we'll get right into it. So thanks for joining me again this month for the webinar. We have a couple of things to talk about. We have two releases that are being released in short order. One is not a release, one is a patch for 6.1.106 or 105. I forget which one it's a patch for, but it's a new patch. It's the .108 patch. We're going to talk about that. We have a new release, a formal release, not a patch, but an actual release coming up near the end of the month, 6.1.200. We'll talk about some of the UI updates that we've added in the past month to go along with the ones that I talked about in June. Then we'll cover some of the more important bug fixes. And then I'll talk a little bit about an upcoming feature in the product that we'll get our first sneak peek of, which we're calling Pathfinder, about which more in due course. Let's talk about the 6.1.108 patch. 6.1.105, that was the issue, or that was the version, had an issue. Actually, it had a couple of issues. Most of you might not have noticed these issues, but some of them were significant depending on what you were doing with the product. If you weren't doing those things, you would never see them and everything would just operate as normally. But there were a couple of things for certain features of the product that weren't working right in .105. So we have issued a new patch. That patch became available last week, just prior to the holiday. So I believe we let that loose on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you are on .105, we do recommend that you get the patch to update it. Go ahead and go to the support site, submit a support ticket, and we will schedule you for an installation of the .108 patch. That should resolve some of those outstanding issues for you. There's still a couple of other things that are not going to be fixed until .200. We'll talk about that when we get to .200. But in the meantime, if you're on 6.1.105 and you would like the patch, submit a support ticket. I'll get you scheduled to have a patch installed, and you won't really notice anything for the most part. There's no real UI changes or anything like that will make it obvious, but it will fix some of those bugs that were in .105. So if you want this patch, please ask us. We'll get that to you. Our next formal release is 6.1.200. This will have the UI changes, those that we talked about last month, as well as those that we'll talk about coming up in a few minutes. Our target is the last week of July. I believe the date that we're shooting for is July 22nd. That's not set in stone. It may be delayed for a day or two for whatever reason. And so count on the end of July, the 22nd or very soon after, for 6.1.200. All of the UI changes that I talked about last month, the bug fixes I talked about last month, and those that I talked about this month, although several of the bug fixes from last month have now been incorporated into .108. But they'll also be rolled into .200, including the bug fixes that we'll talk about a little bit later on today. So look forward to that coming up at the end of the month. And some of these UI changes are quality of life issues. Last month, we talked about the new navigation that we're adding for case management, which really is a big improvement. It's such a small thing, but it's really big. And also the ability to clear your filter from the knowledge view. So when you put a search filter in, excuse me, currently you have to, sort of backspace through and delete everything. Just having that X button to clear your search term is a big quality of life improvement. You wouldn't think that it would be, but it actually is. So look forward to that release coming up a little bit later this month. Some UI changes. LastPass continues to be a problem because because of its insistence on filling out anything that might conceivably be a username or password. So we've had to implement some editing into the product to prevent LastPass from doing things. Last month, we talked about the installation settings page. This month, we need to talk about the user profile page, where if you look up at the very top of the user profile, you can see that the user ID, the username, and the email address now all have modify buttons, and they are disabled by default. So if you want to make a change to any of these fields without having LastPass conveniently change them for you, then you will need to click the modify button for the appropriate field, make that field editable, make your change, and then save your change. LastPass is very convenient in many respects, but troublesome in others. So we are going through the UI and finding these things that LastPass is just giddy with delight when it sees and it wants to change. And we're making those non-editable so that you have to manually make them editable before you can make any changes to them. And that should protect you from any additional inadvertent value changes that you wouldn't want LastPass to make, no matter how eager it is to make them for you. The content list. Okay. For those of you who are on the more geeky side, and that would include most people here at BP Logix, we have added a new feature to the content list. It's kind of hidden. You don't know it's there. There's nothing explicit about it, but you can now search by the ID or GUID for a particular object. So if I go back into Process Director, and we'll just open up the content list. Another nice thing about the new content list is the ability to have it open anywhere, even in IT admin. Quality of life features are easy to overlook, but quite valuable once you have them. So let me go into, I don't know, testing and documentation. Let's look at this object right here. We'll open it up. It is a process timeline, and like all other objects in Process Director, it has a GUID, which in this case is the PRID. And so if I wanted to find a specific object in Process Director and I knew what the PRID was, I could find it pretty easily. Obviously, if I know the name, I can find it. So, documentation, I can find anything that says documentation, but I have a lot of things that say documentation. That's not super helpful. By the way, again, notice the little X icon where I can just clear my filter phrase, and I can just paste in part of the PRID, and it will automatically find that specific object with the PRID. Now, I've just put in part of the PRID, but I have put in enough to make it unique. Let's just say I wanted to find anything. I'm just curious as to whether I have anything that is 3E21. Oh, well, I do have a couple of things here. I have another timeline down here that has 3E21 somewhere in the process ID, and there it is right there, 3E21. So you can search by the ID. Of course, you have to know how to find the ID. Most of the time, if you are doing programmatic stuff, you're using the SDK, and there's a lot of get form by ID or what have you, and you do need to know the form ID, being able to search through and find the form ID is pretty cool. I'm going to open up this form here, which is called section test. And here we go. There's the form ID. So if I just wanted to find that form or anything that had AD50 in the ID, it would find it. And as it turns out, I have a couple of forms. I have this calendar form down here that also has AD50 somewhere in the PRID. And there it is right there. It's that little set of letters and numbers right there. So it's real convenient, especially if you're doing development stuff and you need to know the ID and you have the ID and you want to go grab the object real quickly. And if you have a content list, where mine is getting kind of lengthy at this point, it's becoming more difficult for me to find stuff on my own system. But if I was writing a script or something and I had the ID handy, I could always just grab that object right by the ID. This is especially true because I'm horrible at naming things. And so I have, many items that might, say your document or documentation, and it becomes hard for me to document. Well, if we could spell. So, if I was looking for something that had document in there, all right, well, I've got a lot of things. I have a whole bunch of things in here probably that say training. So there we go. So names are not super useful for me. Sample. That's another word that I use a lot. Okay. I've got all kinds of stuff that say sample, including all of these items that we're going to look at here in just a minute. The sample KView. Names don't help me very much a lot of times, and it doesn't really narrow down what it is I'm looking for. Being able to look for the ID is a convenient new feature that will be available in .200. And we saw all those sample KViews in a folder. They're there for a reason. I created them intentionally yesterday. With the new UI, there is an issue, and it's a hard issue to overcome because it is a technical limit. If you have many content objects in a folder, that can be a problem. It's not so bad when you talk about form instances or timeline instances, because those knowledge views tend to be searchable, so you can find the specific one that you want. However, if you have more than 2,000 objects in a folder, and as it turns out, some of you do, and that will use all the RAM on your system as it tries to go through, parse out, and find more than 2,000 individual objects in a folder. We would recommend that your folder structure does not include more than 2,000 content list objects in the folder. Again, excluding form instances, timeline instances. We fully expect you to have thousands in that folder, and that's handled a bit differently. But the content list itself, when it's looking for, actual definition objects, maybe having 2,000 definition objects or 2,000 knowledge views or 2,000 timeline definitions in the same folder may not be a best practice. And it certainly causes memory issues when you have thousands of issues in a folder. I think we never really considered that you might have that many, independent objects in a single folder. Turns out we were wrong. Some of you do. So we had to make a couple of changes. There is a custom variable. It's called f-enable content list limit. By default, that's always been turned off, with the assumption that we would just want to show everything that was in the content list. Again, we didn't really think of people who might have thousands of objects in a single folder. And with the UI, that is a bit of a problem with the new UI because of the way it works and the way that it uses memory. So we're turning that on, and we are defaulting that now to true, which means it's only going to show you a certain number of items. Now, the default is 100, I believe. It's also set by another custom variable, in max. Oh no, I can't remember what it is now. And I looked at it just yesterday. It's in max something, which is the maximum list. Just do a search in the documentation for in max. It'll come up. It's the maximum number of administrative objects that'll show up in a list. In any event, that is defaulted, I believe, to 100. You can change that default in those settings as well. You can also, since it applies those by default, you can also change that as well. If you go into your settings and you go into configuration and you go into global knowledge views and you open up your content list, there is now a setting in the content list, which is right there, this maximum number of items in a result list. So you can manually set that. Yesterday, I went in and set it to 100. I specifically set it to 100 so that I could demo what we're going to demo here in just a second. But we have this maximum number of items in a result list. Property setting, you can set that to set the maximum. This will overwrite the defaults that are set in the in-max limit to list custom variable, which I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. I suppose I could find it. It's 1016. We have plenty of time. Let me find it. That way we'll know exactly which one it is. And I'm just going to search for in-max because I think they're all together. List maximum custom variables. Well, the topic is a very logical name. It is the list maximum custom variables. And I believe it is in-max admin rows. Yeah, I believe it is in-max admin rows, and there's also in KView built-in max results, both of which might be relevant to you, but I think it's in-max admin rows. That's the default maximum number of rows for any admin related list. I think that covers the content list as well. Although content lists are KViews, so it may also be in KView built-in max results. Now I don't remember the exact one, but they're all here so that you know, and these set your defaults. And I have the default variable set. I think the default max is 1,000 on in KView built-in max results. I know it is 1,000 because I wrote it there. Your in-max admin rows, the maximum default is 100. It doesn't matter. You can overwrite that for the global knowledge view by just specifying the maximum number of items in a result list, and that will ensure that you don't see more items in a folder than you want to see. Now, as a practical matter, how this is shown to you in the UI, if I can remember where it is, there it is. It's right there. I want you to look over on the right-hand side, or sorry, the left-hand side of your screen. And there's a folder here called Many Items. And I know this is the folder I want because it already has that little eye icon that tells me something important is going on. And indeed, if I mouse over it, I am now going to get a message in the UI that says, okay, you've reached the max number of results. Use a filter for more specific results. So in this Many Items folder, and we can click on it, but we still won't be able to see all of the items because up at the very top, it will give us that message again. We've reached the max number of results. So as you can see, I copied and pasted the same knowledge view over and over and over, which is why I have copy, 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 copy everywhere. But I've got well over 100 knowledge views in this folder. And so the UI is telling me I've got too many items in this folder. It's not going to display them all. I exceed the max. It's going to show me that warning here, just as it will up at the very top in the banner whenever I happen to open that folder. So that little eye icon there is really important. It tells you that you have just placed too many items in this folder based on the list maximum settings that you have specified in your global content list knowledge view. So with that, it's just going to prevent this problem of having more than 2,000 objects in a folder from using up all of your memory. We're just not going to enumerate through all of those objects in the folder. You're going to have to filter that folder to find the objects that you want. So you're going to have to know their name, or you're going to have to create a knowledge view that will allow you to find those specific items quickly and just run that knowledge view. Again, if you having more than 2,000 objects in a folder is not a best practice. Once again, we will exclude form instances, timeline instances. We fully expect you to have potentially thousands of items in those folders, but those are not what really causes the problem. They are technically content list objects, but they're a different order of objects than definitions are, like process timeline definitions or form definitions. So it doesn't really count against those. We already have a way of finding those. Those are already limited in what they return. There's already searches built into the knowledge view itself in the content list for you to be able to find specific items. If you have thousands and thousands of items, you should, as a best practice, be putting request numbers on items that are unique so that you can uniquely find items simply by searching their names for the request number. We cover this in training quite a lot. That's a best practice that you should be implementing to allow you to find those instances easily. But with these changes, I believe that largely resolves the memory issues that show up when you have 2,000 or more objects inside a single folder in Process Director. So let's talk about bug fixes now. You may have noticed in .105 that there is an annoying frequency of little red error messages that pop up on the bottom right corner of the screen that say server communication lost, with a little reconnect now button. And sometimes you click reconnect now, and sometimes you don't even have to. It just goes away after a second on its own and says, connection succeeded. This is a new reporting system that we have implemented into the product. It didn't really exist prior to 6.1. And it's a very good reporting system, but it also reports as, false connection losses, things that we expect there to be a connection loss on. We expect the item to be delivered once and never to be checked again. And so we close that connection. So we're getting a lot of these false reports of server connection lost when in fact, the server connection loss is intentional. So it's really a matter of tuning that notification system so that it provides you correct results rather than false flagging positive results that really it shouldn't be flagging. So I think we've done some tuning there to radically reduce the possibility of you seeing an incorrect server communication error. SAML single log off was a little tricky on the log off part. It wasn't redirecting back to the correct SAML log off page that you might have had configured. That was a bug on our part. We've managed to fix that. Unexpected page reloads. And this happens sometimes when you're navigating through and it just takes you back to the main page of your workspace when you didn't expect it, like you closed a form or you closed an object, and we're getting these unexpected reloads. And what happens when it reloads the entire page is it just puts you usually right back into whatever the home page is of whatever workspace you happen to be looking at. That can be inconvenient, especially if you're like an IT admin, as I often am. And then the page reloads, and all of a sudden I'm back at the IT admin homepage, which is not where I wanted to be and not where I was. I was looking at the content list. It's irksome. It's not fatal. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't break anything. It's just really tedious to have to then navigate back to where you were. So we've addressed that. In a knowledge view, there is a style property. So since we happen to be looking at just a whole bunch of knowledge views here, let's open one up. And there is a style property. It's right on the configure tab. And you can change from the default Process Director, boring black and white style to many of these built-in styles. These built-in styles are great. Some of them are pretty. Some of them are extraordinarily ugly. Your mileage on what you think is pretty and ugly may vary, but whenever you picked a style other than default, it was breaking in-place editing, and you couldn't do in-place editing. You'd have to go back to the default style. We've managed to address that so that you can use both styles in your knowledge views, as well as continue to do in-place editing. Firefox was a problem for some reason and still is a problem. Surprisingly, there are people who still use it, and we have got a couple of issues with Firefox. The trouble with having, I guess, two major engines now, because Microsoft and several others have now kind of gone over to the Chromium engine. And so there's a lot of unification in the base engine of the browser. Of course, the base for Firefox is still the Mozilla engine, formerly the Netscape engine. It's different in a lot of ways. Having multiple browser engines occasionally causes problems. And Firefox has just been one that's caused a couple of problems that we've had to fix. One thing that is still broken in .108, but that will be fixed in .200, is category navigation in knowledge views. There's a bug that prevents metadata from working the way it's supposed to work. And if you try to apply category navigation to a knowledge view, it simply will not show you that category navigation. Category navigation is dependent, of course, on metadata. Metadata is something that not a lot of you use. So this is one of those errors that, unless you're using metadata extensively, like in a some sort of document library or something, you just really will never see this error, but it does exist, and it has been fixed in .200 so that metadata and category navigation in knowledge views based on metadata now works as expected. We've added the business unit field to the provision users CT. It wasn't in there previously, and I guess it was just a little bit of an oversight, but that field has now been added to the provision users CT. You should, of course, on a more or less regular basis, check the support site. Custom tasks have a separate download from Process Director, and custom task versions generally have nothing to do with Process Director. Now, there was an occasion 2 years ago where some of the updates that we made to Process Director required updating many of the custom tasks and releasing a new custom task version. That is the exception rather than the rule. In general, custom tasks and Process Director versions are not related at all. They're downloaded separately, and updates to custom tasks and updates to Process Director do not necessarily happen in conjunction with each other. They may, but they often do not. So you should be going in and checking the support site on the downloads page and looking for the most recent version of the custom tasks and updating your custom tasks whenever there's a new version of them, irrespective of whether or not you have updated Process Director recently. The two are not related. So as a best practice, check the custom tasks just to be sure that you have the most recent versions of them. Not a bug, but some work that's going on behind the scenes with performance improvements. We are in the middle of an initiative to improve the performance of the product. Much of the code for the product is legacy code, was based on how things were done 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I mean, we can go all the way back to 2007 with this thing. And practices have changed since then, and we're going back in, finding some of these internal processes that we use to retrieve data. Some of them, with the way that they can be done now, are, by modern standards, wildly inefficient. And so we are able to cut the amount of time that it takes to perform certain operations, like returning things from the content list and what have you. And we're able to substantially reduce the amount of time that those items take, which makes the product seem much snappier, much more responsive, quicker to show you the data that you want. That is an ongoing thing that we are doing to just find all of these things where there are performance issues. We've actually built a system on the development side where we can actually invoke an action and time how long that action takes in milliseconds. find those things that take a long time, look at see how we can improve their efficiency. And then, of course, once we've done so, we can run them again, and we have a very good idea in terms of milliseconds, how much faster it makes the product respond. That is a development effort that is ongoing and will probably continue to be ongoing for the next several months as we kind of nail down some of these performance-related issues that can be improved simply by updating and modernizing the product. One of the things about having a product that A, needs to remain backwards compatible, and B, goes back to, at this point, Process Director is almost 20 years old. It's 2024, 2000, so 17 years old. 17 years is a lifetime in the software development world. And so having to go back and fix these things that were architected when we had to do things a different way, when we didn't have the same technologies that we have today, there's this legacy overhead on any old software that has to be modernized and updated. And so that's what we're doing. We're going back, finding these old legacy things and fixing them and bringing them up to modern standards to reduce some of that, what we refer to as technical debt. And as a result, we can see real performance differences in newer versions of the product as we clean that up. And one of the primary impetuses for cleaning that up, of course, has been the new UI and switching things over to React and getting rid of the architectural paradigm that existed in the mid 2000s to the 2010s. That now sort of forces us to go back in and address this technical debt just to bring the product up to a more modern standard of performance and reliability. With the number of bug fixes, you might not think that reliability is one of our primary concerns, but in fact, it is. You do need to appreciate the enormous level of effort that this has taken to implement this new UI and overcome the legacy architecture. Finally, as we go, there's a new feature under development called Pathfinder. It adds an AI search feature directly into the product. We have something like this in the documentation already. We have a service called Custom GPT that uses OpenAI's ChatGPT model in the background to answer questions that you might have about the documentation. It's been trained on the documentation. We're doing the same thing inside the product. It is not the same service. This is a Microsoft Azure-based service, although it is fundamentally based on the OpenAI LLM. And so it will operate in a very similar fashion, but it is not the same service. It is a Microsoft Azure service, and the purpose is to provide answers in the product itself. I can only demo clicking this button and showing you the Pathfinder window. I can't ask it questions, and it's going to show an error when I do. So I'm not even going to ask it a question. If you want to have a good idea of how it's supposed to look and work, open up doc.bplogix.com and use the custom GPT chatbot there. It's going to be something very similar to that. You ask a question, it will return an answer to you in plain English. And again, it'll be built directly into the product so that you can get your answers there without having to open up your browser, go to the documentation, try to search there. You'll just be able to find those answers here. I will add the normal caveats that you have when using ChatGPT and the OpenAI products in general. While they are good at constructing answers, whether those answers are correct or not largely depends on your question and how you ask it and whether you use the right terms. That's a difficult problem to solve in a product that uses many specific terms for specific objects, and we kind of expect to hear those terms. So if you call a form the thingy with all the controls, the chatbot will not necessarily know that what you want is information about a form, and it may go off and just tell you all about controls, which you may not want to hear about. So you may not get the answer that you want. As always, when you're using any of these LLM systems, the way that you interact with them and the type of queries that you enter has a direct effect on the quality of the answer you receive. So we're going to work on what documentation needs to be trained on, because we are doing it in one of the products that we sell directly to customers. We have put in the training documentation into that, and we're testing it out there. In the product, it's going to be a little more difficult because we have thousands of pages of documentation, which opens up the number of answers that you can get quite substantially. But that is what we are working on, an AI assistant that we're calling Pathfinder inside Process Director that will be available in a future version. Do not ask me what version it will be available or when it will be available. We don't know. This is just the initial implementation of it. I think we're fairly far along in testing, but there's still a long way to go. But that is coming up in Process Director so that you can get direct help when you need it from inside the product. And with that, we are done. That is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate the fact that you attend these webinars. I will look forward to speaking with you either next month at the next Spotlight webinar or on Thursday at the next training webinar. Have a great week. We'll talk to you later. So long.